Rome, the eternal city, drenched in marble, ambition, and blood. Beneath its blazing sun, banners of victory fluttered across the forum, and the name on every tongue was Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar, conqueror of Gaul, hero of the Republic, a man who bent destiny to his will. His return from campaign was not just triumphal, it was divine. The streets erupted in cheers as golden laurel crowns glimmered in the hands of the people, who hailed him not as a general, but as a god walking among men. But power in Rome was a fragile crown. For every cheer that filled the air, a whisper rose in the shadows. Senators spoke in hushed tones behind marble pillars that the Republic, once sacred, was slipping into the grasp of one man. That beneath Caesar's charm burned the quiet flame of a king, a title Rome had sworn to destroy. And yet, Caesar was no mere tyrant. He was a visionary, reshaping law, rebuilding cities, forgiving enemies who had once drawn blades against him. To the people, he was mercy itself. To the Senate, he was danger cloaked in brilliance. On the surface, Rome glittered like gold. But gold, when struck, reveals its cracks. And in those cracks, in envy, in fear, in love, twisted into loyalty, the seeds of betrayal began to take root. For every empire that rises, there waits a knife in the dark. And soon, that knife would find its mark in the heart of Rome itself. The Senate of Rome, once the heart of the Republic, now pulsed with unease. The marble halls echoed not with reasoned debate, but with murmurs of fear. Julius Caesar had returned from conquest crowned in glory, but to many his triumphs reeked of tyranny. His statue stood among the gods. His portrait was stamped on coins. He sat upon a golden throne while the Senate bowed lower than custom allowed. Rome had defeated kings, they whispered, only to kneel before another. Among those whispers, one voice burned with venom. Cassius Longinus. Sharp of mind and bitter of heart, Cassius watched Caesar with a hatred born of envy. He had fought beside him once, shared the same dust and blood on the battlefield, yet now saw himself fading into Caesar's shadow. But Cassius was no fool. He knew that hatred alone could not strike down a god. For that, he needed a symbol, a man the people trusted, a man whose honor could mask their treachery. And that man was Marcus Brutus. Brutus, philosopher, senator, heir to the ideals of the Republic. He loved Caesar as a father. He believed in him, admired his mercy, his intellect, his courage. But as the Senate grew restless, so too did Brutus's conscience. Cassius whispered to him in the corridors of power, weaving words like silk. Would Rome be free if one man holds her crown? Each night, Brutus wrestled with himself. Could love for a friend outweigh duty to the Republic? Was Caesar's greatness the Republic's salvation trodden to its doom? Outside, the city celebrated festivals in Caesar's name. Inside, hearts turned cold with conspiracy. The lines between loyalty and treason blurred in the Roman dusk. And in that gathering darkness, men who once toasted Caesar's victories began to draw maps of his death. The laurel wreath that crowned a hero was beginning to tighten into a noose. The days before the Ides were heavy with silence. Even the wind seemed to move cautiously through the streets of Rome, as if afraid to disturb fate. The sky had turned the color of rust. Lightning cracked across it without rain, and the priests whispered of ill omen. Blood found in the entrails of sacrificed beasts. Strange lights seen in the forum, and a lioness giving birth in the temple's shadow. Rome itself seemed to tremble under some unseen weight. In the marble halls of Caesar's home, Calpurnia, his wife, woke in the night screaming. She had seen a dream, a statue of her husband pouring blood from 100 wounds, while Romans washed their hands in it. She clutched him, begging him not to go to the Senate on the morning of the Ides. Her voice broke as she pleaded, "They mean to harm you. Stay home, my lord, just for one day." Caesar smiled, weary yet unshaken. He had lived through assassins and storms, through wars that devoured empires. To him, fear was the luxury of lesser men. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, kissed her brow, and said softly, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. But even the great can hesitate when the gods whispered too loudly." He called for his servant to tell the priests to perform another sacrifice, hoping for clearer signs. When the augurs returned, their faces were pale. The heart of the beast was missing, a heartless omen, a sign to stay home. For a moment, the conqueror of Gaul faltered. Perhaps the fates had tired of him. Perhaps the gods wanted their throne back. Then came Decimus Brutus, one of Caesar's trusted allies and one of the conspirators. He laughed at Calpurnia's fears, his voice light, his words dripping honey. "The Senate plans to honor you today, Caesar. If you do not come, they may think you no longer trust them." Flattery, gentle, irresistible, wrapped itself around Caesar's pride. He straightened his cloak, nodded, and said, "I will go." As the dawn broke over Rome, a golden light touched the rooftops and temples, washing them in deceptive calm. Caesar stepped into his litter, surrounded by senators and guards. The people cheered as he passed, their shouts echoing down the stone streets like a heartbeat. But behind those cheers, shadows moved, daggers glinted beneath togas. Eyes exchanged silent signals. The conspirators smiled as the great Julius Caesar, conqueror, orator, dreamer of kingship, made his final walk toward the Curia of Pompey. And somewhere above, as if mocking the moment, a single eagle circled the forum, its cry sharp, distant, and mournful. The Curia of Pompey stood silent that morning, a temple to power, yet about to become a tomb. Sunlight filtered through high windows, falling across the marble floor, where statues of Rome's heroes looked on in eternal judgment. When Julius Caesar entered, the senators rose. A sea of white togas rippled before him. Men who had once followed him into war, now clutching their scrolls with trembling hands. He greeted them with a calm smile, his confidence undimmed, unaware that within this chamber, history had already decided his fate. Among the crowd, Cassius's eyes burned with calculation. Casca's hand gripped the hilt of his blade beneath his robe, and Brutus, Caesar's beloved friend, his protege, his son, stood silent, his heart divided between loyalty and duty. Caesar took his seat, golden wreath upon his brow, the symbol of his near-kingly power. He began to speak of reforms, of Rome's greatness, of peace after conquest, the words that once ignited nations, but today they fell like ashes. Then from the corner, Tullius Cimber approached, holding a petition. He fell to his knees. "Pardon my brother, Caesar," he begged. Caesar raised a hand, irritated, dismissing him. "Your brother has offended the state." Cimber grasped his toga, a breach of decorum so bold that every eye in the chamber froze. And in that stillness, Casca struck first. A flash of steel, a gasp. Not from Caesar, but from the senators who watched in horror as the blade tore through his flesh. Caesar staggered, eyes wide in disbelief. Another blow came, then another. Cassius, Decimus, Trebonius, Cinna. Each man lunged, their daggers carving betrayal into living flesh. The Curia erupted in chaos. The marble floor darkened beneath him. Caesar fought back at first, the soldier's instinct still alive. But he was surrounded by men he had trusted, by hands that once clasped his in friendship. And then he saw Brutus, not with rage, but with heartbreak. The world seemed to still. The noise faded, the daggers froze mid-motion, and all that remained was the quiet recognition between two souls bound by fate. "Es-tu brute?" he whispered. The words were not accusation, but sorrow. "A question, you too, my son?" With that, he stopped resisting. He drew his toga over his face, dignity even in death, and fell at the foot of Pompey's statue as if Rome itself had turned against him. Blood pooled at its base, staining the marble where another great leader had once fallen. The assassins stood over him, their chests heaving, their blades slick and red. Cassius lifted his hands, shouting, "Liberty! Freedom!" But the echo that returned was hollow. Outside, the people of Rome waited for news of their ruler. When the doors opened and the whispers spread, "Caesar is dead." The city that had roared his name for years fell into terrified silence. No cheers for liberty, no cries of joy, only confusion, disbelief, and the first tremors of chaos, for they had killed not just a man, but the heartbeat of Rome. And in that single act meant to restore the Republic, they had sown the seeds of its ruin. The Ides of March had claimed its sacrifice. And above the Curia, the eagle that had circled the Forum vanished into a grey and silent sky. The dream of liberty died as swiftly as Caesar himself. In the weeks that followed, Rome did not rise in gratitude. It bled. The conspirators, once hailed as saviors of the Republic, became fugitives from its fury. Brutus, noble, tortured Brutus, wandered the fields of Philippi with a heart hollowed by regret. He had killed a tyrant, or so he told himself. Yet every night the same face returned in his dreams. Caesar's eyes, not angry, but disappointed. As civil war engulfed Rome, the ideals that had driven him, reason, justice, freedom, dissolved into the smoke of ambition and vengeance. Octavian and Antony avenged Caesar, not with mercy, but with empire. And the Republic Brutus died to save was buried beside the man he betrayed. On the eve of his final battle, Brutus fell on his own sword, his last words whispered not to Rome, but to the ghost of his friend, "Caesar, now be still." And thus ended the age of ideals. From Caesar's blood rose the empire that would rule the world. Proof that power once touched can never be unmade. Loyalty, ambition, friendship, betrayal, all threads in the same tapestry of fate. And in its crimson weave, the lesson endures that even the noblest hearts, when bound to power, may one day carve their own undoing.